right, let's also discuss further this issue about yung self-rated poverty ng ating mga Pinoy. Ano ba yung mga programa pa rin ng DSWD dyan? We have on the line DSWD Assistant Secretary Irene Dumlao joining us today. Magandang umaga po sa inyo, Asek.
Hi Angela and Angelo, magandang umaga sa inyo. Magandang umaga din po sa lahat ng sumusubaybay ng inyong pong programa.
Well, Asek, let's start off. We just had on our program a while ago si Secretary Gadon, and he was saying, based on surveys, parang it does not really reflect what the Philippine
status,
Statistics Authority would say na the real status. Ano po ang tugon nyo dito?
Well, ang Department of Social Welfare and Development, unang-una, recognize natin yung mga lumalabas na mga pag-aaral. Hinggil nga po dito sa nararamdamang kahirapan ng ating mga kababayan. And the DSWD remains committed to implement various social protection programs and services, again, to alleviate poverty and makatulong po sa mga nangangailangan nating mga kababayan. Marami po kasing mga factors na nasa-apekto sa mga poor, the marginalized, and the vulnerable. And as I've said, the DSWD remains committed to ensuring na maayos yung pagpapatupad natin ng mga programa to ensure that our poor Filipinos graduate or exit from poverty.
Before I turn it over to Angel, just to catch up on that, ano po yung pinaka-basic necessity when you say in borderline to interpret yourself as poor? Is it based on food or food and shelter, or food, shelter, and income?
Well, Angelo, we're looking at various sectors, social and economic conditions.
Okay.
Kaya nga sa DSWD, yung ating mga social workers, we make use of the social welfare and development indicators to determine social adequacy and economic sufficiency of poor households who are enrolled in our programs. Dito natin na monitor if nag-i-improve yung level of well-being nila and kung nag-gain ng traction yung iba't ibang interventions that we are extending to them. Yung SWD tools ina-administer ng ating mga social workers for Pantawid Pamilyang Filipino Program beneficiaries, that's administered annually.
Yeah.
So, and of course, yung mga social workers kasi natin, we employ or we make use of case management because sabi ko nga, there are socio-economic factors that affect yung pong living well-being ng ating mga beneficiaries. So, binibisita yan ng ating pong mga social workers to determine the root causes of poverty, what are the factors affecting their households that exacerbate their living conditions, and other indicators are being studied, again, so that we could determine the appropriate interventions para po sa kanila.
Asek, having said that, ano po yung nakita natin factors that contribute naman po doon sa pamumuhay ng ating mga kababayan sa Mindanao? Because according to this survey, 69% pa rin po, mananatiling malaki pa rin yung porsyento na self-rated poverty sa Mindanao.
Well, isa po sa mga tinitingnan ng DSWD, of course, ay yung disasters. Alam naman po natin that disasters disproportionately affect the poor, the vulnerable, and the marginalized. And even ito kasi mga mahihirap kapag naapektuhan ng mga disasters and natural hazards na exacerbate yung kanila pong level of well-being. So that's one factor that we are looking at right now. And of course, kaya nga ini-ensure ni DSWD na meron tayong mga appropriate na assistance na po-provide to disaster-affected populations. Apart from that, there are adverse shocks, mga crises that further exacerbates the vulnerabilities of the poor. Kaya, again, sabi ko nga kanina, our social workers make sure na nabibisita ang ating pong mga mahihirap na mga kababayan so that we could determine the appropriate assistance para po sa kanila.
But what about po in Metro Manila? 36% pa rin po, slower rate pa rin sa mga urban areas despite the studies and the reports saying na tulad po ng sinasabi ni Secretary Larry Gadon na mataas naman yung employment rate, we have reached our target sa GDP, etc. Bakit po parang merong disconnect pagdating po sa ganun, especially here in Metro Manila, where in fact marami pong supposedly available jobs here, mas malapit yung tulong na inaibibigay sa kanila?
Yeah, kung similar to other regions, nakikita nga natin yung disasters. Malaking bagay yan, malaking factor yan na nakaka-apekto. And then, of course, economic conditions like inflation. Kaya nga meron tayong mga programa kagaya ng ayuda para sa kapos ang kita to caution the impact of inflation to families and individuals. Another thing is yung sudden crisis or sudden shocks, kagaya nga ng pagkakasakit ng miyembro ng pamilya, or yung kapag may namatay na miyembro ng pamilya na siya yung nagtataguyod ng kanyang pamilya. These are the factors kasi na nakikita nga natin. But what is important on the part of the DSWD is that we have different programs na ipinapatupad natin para po somehow ma-caution o ma-address yung mga impact ng mga ganong crisis na nararamdaman po ng ating mga kababayan.
But Asek, speaking of programs, si Senator Irene Tulfo was saying na baka in the near future it would be better instead of an outright ayuda that we teach them how to start up a business and provide some capital for it. Meron bang current program ngayon sa DSWD that would be similar to that of what is Senator Tulfo is suggesting?
Yeah. Of course, Angelo, we are in agreement naman with Senator Tulfo doon sa hangarin nga niya na ma-improve yung level of well-being ng ating mga kababayan, makapacitate sila so that they'll be able to fish for their own. Actually, ang DSWD, meron po tayong Sustainable Livelihood Program wherein we capacitate our poor households so that they could enter into thriving livelihoods or employment, o matulungan sila to enter into gainful employment. Actually, when Senator Irene Tulfo visited the office last week and they had a meeting with Secretary Rex, isa nga itong Sustainable Livelihood Program. Doon sa mga napag-usapan na po pwedeng maging part ng toolkit for 4-piece beneficiaries who will be exiting from the program. This is one of the things that we're looking at to sustain the investments that we have had to our 4-piece beneficiaries. Diba? Kasi when they exit from the program, especially after the 7-year program participation, as indicated in the law, makakatiyak tayo na masusustain yung improvement in their level of well-being. Kasi sayang naman kung natulungan na natin sila, nakapag-reach na sila ng level 3 or self-sufficiency, and then after they exit from the program, meron lang disaster or any condition that might affect them, bababa na muli sila sa kahirapan. So, again, the Sustainable Livelihood Intervention is one of the things that we're looking at. And napag-agrihan nga po ito between Senator and Secretary Rex na pwedeng maging ma-introduce as amendments to the 4th law.
Pero yung toolkit, Asek...
Cellphone.
Yes, Asek. Yung toolkit na sinasabi, Asek, kasama ba dito yung opportunity to have at least capital wherein they could use it to start up at least a small sari-sari store or whatever it is that would help them?
Yes, ito nga yung included doon sa ating Sustainable Livelihood Program. Again, let me reiterate, Angelo and Angela, yung SLP kasi natin, we capacitate the poor households so that they could enter into either micro-enterprise development or into employment facilitation. 2 tracks kasi yung Sustainable Livelihood Program natin. So pwedeng family sila doon. But what is important is we train them, we capacitate them, and we provide them seed capital fund so that they could start with a simple livelihood activity that they could further yung mapayabong pa nila. With, of course, the necessary assistance coming from the DSWD.
Right. Asek, I was wondering, how do we make sure po yung sa office po ninyo that such programs that you've mentioned time and again po dito sa aming programa ay nararamdaman po ng mga those right people, no? I'm not saying na wala naman natutulungan ng DSWD, but if you go to, let's say, Tondo, Manila, a lot of families there are still eating pagpag. No, and sinasabi, when you ask that to Secretary Gadon, he would say na siguro hindi lang sila nalalapitan, hindi nila nalalapitan ng maayos yung mga tamang tao para sila ay matulungan. So how do we make sure that such programs would really felt by the right people?
Yes. First, Angela, all our developmental programs, even yung mga social welfare programs natin, are well targeted. So, ibig sabihin, meron po tayong ginagamit na batayan or reference in identifying our program beneficiaries. Like in Walang Gutom program or the food stamps program, meron tayong ginamit na listahanan wherein we were able to identify 750,000 households belonging to the food poor sector. And itong listahanan ay ibinangga natin sa data ng Philippine Statistics Authority, particularly the Family Income and Expenditure Survey, so that we could identify who are eligible beneficiaries of the food stamps program. And second, we work closely with various local government units because we need to verify kung yung bang lumalabas sa list ay those that we will be enrolling in the program. And there's regular monitoring of our program staff. So apart from the conditions that the program beneficiaries they need to comply to, minomonitor po natin sila. Kaya napakahalaga nung role ng ating mga social workers, yung case management records na mini-maintain po natin because doon talagang nakikita natin na kabilang sa mga mahirap na pamilya itong mga natukoy natin ng program beneficiaries and yung mga specific interventions na binigay po natin are also listed in their case study reports. Kaya nakakatiyak po tayo na yung napasama sa programa are indeed those eligible. Now, there's also a mechanism in our programs na kapag meron pong mga hindi napasama but are eligible, pwede po silang pumunta sa DSWD office and file their grievances or their appeals so that DSWD could do validation and kung necessary, ma-enroll po sila sa programa. So again,
ito yung mga unregistered.
our programs are well targeted and are monitored. And of course, these have specific conditions.
Alright, with that having said, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras, DSWD Assistant Secretary Irene Dumlao.